Alright, welcome to our quick review of the Human Development Index and the Millennium Development Goals. The slides were designed to accompany the book People, Places, and Culture, and I am, of course, Miss Dahl, and I'll be your host for the lecture, for our review, I should say. So the Human Development Index, very quickly, by the way, we abbreviate that HDI, and what it does is goes beyond economics, so beyond that gross national product or gross domestic product, gross national income, those kinds of things, and incorporates, really again, those three basic dimensions of human development. Long and healthy life, okay. Knowledge is access to learning, and a decent standard of living. And standard of living just really means access to a good home, enough food, kind of those things that make life good, okay. And so they use a number of statistics, including some of the economic ones, right? So they include per capita GDP, for instance, but they also look at things like literacy rates, school enrollment rates, which are both ways to gauge access to knowledge. Okay. Life expectancy at birth, a way to calculate kind of how long people are expected to live, so that's that long and healthy life. Right? And those types of things and many, many more calculate into and factor into the calculation of the Human Development Index. So when we look at the Human Development Index, and these are the numbers from 2010, okay, and this map really just kind of gives you the eyeball estimate. They round it off. Obviously, they just grouped people. But this matches, as you would expect that it does to a large degree, matches are more developed, less developed, kind of developed, right, or developing model. So very high human development, not surprisingly, North America, Western Europe, Australia, Japan, right? High human development, Russia, Brazil, Libya, again, these numbers 2010, Mexico. So our high human development, that encompasses the lower end of our more developed countries and the higher end of our mid-level countries, right? And this makes sense. We've got kind of that medium level of human development, Mongolia, China, Bhutan, Bolivia, right? South Africa, Botswana, Namibia, India, right? Lots and lots of countries that are kind of they're either clearly mid-level development or they're the higher end of low economic development. Right? So there's some places where that kind of surprises you, potentially that they have a high human development, but when you look at it, when you stop and think about it, that high human development just means that they're on the way to that high level of economic development, because those things that factor into a high level of human development are the same things that are going to ultimately increase their economic development. And then we've got that area, those low development, right? And that's kind of that real light yellow. And that, not surprisingly, much of sub-Saharan Africa, right? A handful of areas in the Middle East, right? Afghanistan, which is technically kind of Central Asia, Southwest Asia. Myanmar, which is getting quite a bit better, actually, in the last few months, last year or so, right? So those are very less developed countries. And again, this kind of makes sense. Countries that are more developed or better developed to some degree have a little bit more, for lack of a better term, leisure or the ability to invest in these things. And so it's kind of a contradictory thing, because to be able to develop economically, you have to invest in your human development, but in order to invest in your human development, you have to have some level of economic development going on. So just some things to kind of think about as you're thinking about Human Development Index and the Millennium Development Goals. And speaking of the Millennium Development Goals, here's what they are. Okay, and these actually just expired earlier this year. So the goals were to eradicate extreme poverty and hunger, achieve universal primary education, promote gender equality and empower women, reduce child mortality, improve maternal health, combat HIV, AIDS, malaria, and other diseases. So those are just the most common ones, right? Ensure environmental sustainability, and then develop a global partnership for development. And as you can see, these are actually designed to support increasing human development, right? We achieve universal primary education, we're increasing access to knowledge. we eradicate extreme poverty and hunger. We are increasing life expectancies. If we are promoting gender equality and empowering women, better life expectancies for women, right? But also better access to knowledge, mortality, and maternal health related to long, healthy lives, diseases, long, healthy lives. Right? So we can kind of see how these are designed to support each other. And what the UN actually is in the process of doing right now is figuring out what their follow-up is going to be. Because they've been fairly successful with a lot of these. Right? They cut extreme poverty and hunger by something like 50% or 60%. So now what they're down to in terms of that one is the hardest core, right? The poorest of the poor, that we've got to try and move out of that extreme poverty and hunger. And the UN defines that, by the way, as living on less than $1.25 a day. Okay, that's US dollars, $1.25 US a day. Stop and think about that the next time you buy a pop out of one of the machines. Okay, that could be your whole food budget for the day. So, if you have any questions, please feel free to come see me. We've been talking about, again, the Human Development Index and the Millennium Development Goals. And the Human Development Index, the whole point, the whole purpose is just to use some non-economic method of saying, you know, countries are making progress. Countries are making progress. Life is getting better, even if the economics isn't necessarily there yet. But it's a different way of measuring progress and measuring really quality of life in a lot of ways. And the Millennium Development Goals were designed to improve that human development, improve countries on that Human Development Index and move them along that Human Development Index. And so they play into each other and they support each other. If you have questions, please do feel free to come and see me and ask them. I'd be delighted to do whatever I can to help you out. And otherwise, I guess I'll see you the next time we have class.